For a time of year that's supposed to be slow, it's not slow. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today's top story here. We've got Iqra Khalid, one of Justin Trudeau's Liberals, accusing Pierre Poilievre of doing that interview that I posted in my previous video with Jordan Peterson as a video paid for from Russia. That's right. We've also got Jagmeet Singh throwing his weight around, showing how tough he is, slamming the host of This Hour Has 22 Minutes literally on the mats. Among a bunch of other stuff, let's jump into this. We got this one posted by Michael Barrett. It says Trudeau's own department now admits hundreds of millions in corruption by Liberal insiders. It's more than 400 million. They've paralyzed Parliament. So this is the STTC scandal here, ignoring the housing crisis, skyrocketing food costs, and out of control crime. If we take a look at this is coming from Blacklock's reporter. So a little bit hard to read this here, but you can see Annette Verschuren. So she's the one who got a lot of money from this scandal, and she's directly connected to the Verschuren Center. She's connected to NR Store, tried to give $5 million to SDTC funding through a new fund to save it from bankruptcy. We've got Leah Lawrence, CEO's best friend, Zoe Colbuck, current VP, $5 million in funding to Alas. There's a whole bunch of companies here. This is a lot of digging here. Blacklock's reporter has done. We've got Nori, CEO's best friend, is major subcontractor to key projects here. Terra Mira, Mio Vision, Sustainable Development Tech, SDTC protects Leah and approves her bonus. Like, this is a dirty corruption scheme here. A federal agency disbanded in 2024 created a web of conflicts with insiders who made increasingly questionable decisions, says a federal report. The Privy Council document concluded gross mismanagement at the SDTC slush fund. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Once this fully opens up, there's going to be a lot more scandal here, and I hope people actually go to jail for their corruption and theft of Canadian tax dollars. Moving on, we've got this one posted by Marty up north here. This is the Angus Reid Institute. I just make this big for you guys. You can see Premier approval December 2024. I'm seeing conservatives on the right side here. Doug Ford, Danielle Smith, and some liberals on this side, and NDP Wab Kinew here with the highest is 67%. I'm appalled that David Eby is 46. Like, he should be like 0. The NDP is going bankrupt in Manitoba. The electorate will love Kinew because of it. This is what defines so many Canadians. First, Smith's approval in Alberta is over 90% in her party, over 75% in the province. These numbers must be federal rating of premiers. Frankly, as an Albertan, I don't give a crap about what the rest of Canada thinks. So this is probably a federal. I mean, it's kind of weird. Do federal polling on premiers of, if I was to say what I think of Scott Moe or of any of these people, and I live in British Columbia, I just talk about David Eby. He should be 0%. Next up, we got this one. It says China announces sanctions against 28 U.S. companies. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Raytheon. These are all weapons contractors, so not really surprised there. These companies, as it says here, are key military industrial complex and potentially linked to supporting military operations, including what's going on in Gaza. Next up, we got this story here. So Iqra Khalid, she's a very vocal liberal, especially in committee. She's been so vocal that she's dropped so many F-bombs and said so many bad words. I've had some issues here on my channel because of what she said in Parliament. Think about that. As it says here, Trudeau Liberal MP Iqra Khalid takes to X to peddle a baseless conspiracy theory alleging that Pierre Poilievre's recent interview with Jordan Peterson was paid for by the government of Russia. That is a pretty bold statement to make. So I headed over to her X account. Here it is here. You can see this is her X account. And right here at the top, number 1, 4 hours ago, did Russia fund a recent Pierre Poilievre interview? I guess he will never know because he refuses to get his security clearance. This is not acceptable. Just because the guy is beating you in the polls, you can't make up stuff. Like, this should get her sued. It's disgraceful to taxpayers. We're not paying her $200,000 to spew lies on X. And somebody's already posted it here, Mississauga. Erin Mills, CPC likely. She's going to lose her seat. And speaking of Mississauga, so what you're looking at here, believe it or not, this is a map of Mississauga crime. It's so thick you can't even see it. So this block here is all of these things so dense. I set the timeline for all of 2024, and this is how much crime was in Mississauga. So the Mississauga police have this thing where they map it out. This is really smart, but this is catastrophic. Look at this. A single year, every single neighborhood, crime everywhere. So every single one of these, like B is, I believe, break and enter houses. A is for assault. D is for hard candy possession. This other D, hard candy trafficking. F is fraud, homicide, mischief, robbery, and vehicle theft. So vehicle theft, like you can see, that seems to be the most prevalent one, all these red V's everywhere. I mean, look at this. One street right here. All these cars are being stolen. Like, why is this not mainstream media news? Why aren't CTV and CBC and all global picking this up? Why is it only just YouTubers who point out this stuff? It even says here, like, it occurred at 4:33. This one here, when was this car stolen? 1 as well, 1 a.m. So this is stolen at 10 p.m. Either way, like, this is absolutely insane. There's no neighborhood here that is not completely riddled with crime. Like, look at this, filled to the gills with crime. Doesn't matter where we go. And to think that this is only Mississauga, so the boundary line, stops there. If we let this go all the way out here, if this was mapped all the way, like, are all the cities just completely riddled with crime? Justin Trudeau wants to talk about his legacy. This is his legacy right here. Thanks for bringing in these people, Justin. You really did Canada a big favor here, didn't you? You got a robbery here at 8:50 in the morning. I want to jump back to the Jordan Peterson interview here. I want to show you just one other short clip. It's one of the most honest things you'll see a politician ever say, because Pierre Poilievre is asked by Jordan Peterson about being tempted by power, more power, not just being a conservative and governing based on that, but being tempted by the other side and catering to both sides and tempted by the power.
How do you feel about the probability that if the Conservatives in Canada take power, that they'll be enticed into this global utopian delusion that seems to have enveloped so many leaders, kind of regardless of their political stripe? What do you think, if anything, can inoculate you or has inoculated you against that?
I know better.
Well, elaborate. What do you mean?
I'm not going to do that. And it will be hard, because the temptation will be, this is the mistake that conservative parties around the world have made countless times. They think, well, anybody who's got a conservative mindset is already voting for me, so I can go off and chase the ideas of my political opponents, and then everyone will love me, because I'll have the conservatives due to the fact that I have the name conservative, and then I'll have all these other people because I've embraced their contrary direction. And in the short term, it works, because you manage to have all of these people under, and all of the different political ideologies captured in one tent. But the problem happens when the policies are a disaster, and then people wake up and go, oh my God, my taxes are now up, the inflation is out of control, the deficit is spiraling, there's crime on the streets. So does the temptation exist to try and take on the political policies of the socialists in the short term? Sure, but it's one that I will fiercely resist, because I know that by the 4th year of my mandate, people would be enraged because their lives would be even worse. So
this is amazing. No politician actually speaks like this. Just complete honesty, where, yeah, the temptation's there, more power. But as he said, you'd be then putting in, say, these woke policies on the far left that we have right now that's destroying Canada, and thus he would eventually get kicked out for it. Seems every politician in Canada here doesn't make it past 9 or 10 years, the expiry date. Sure, some of that might be because we just get tired of seeing that face all the time as prime minister, but a lot of that is because the prime ministers started getting tempted by the power. Yeah, just charge that to me. No one will know or care. Oh yeah, I'll just go do that thing. I'll go do this thing. And now in comparison, if we look at Stephen Harper's $16 glass of orange juice, seems like small potatoes compared to Justin Trudeau's $400 million SDTC scandal, which is still being covered up, or traitors in the government, or Cycle Capital, or the multiple Randys, or Arrive scam, or you name it. People in power are inherently tempted by just having more. And often the people who get to the top of these positions, they are people who seek power and they want more power, and they can never get enough. Like a lot of these billionaires, there's just never enough money. They just keep getting more and more, when really, if any of us had $1 billion, we could just retire. We would just retire and just go live an amazing life and go surfing or snowboarding or bird watching or whatever you love to do every day. But the people at the top, they're kind of wired a little bit differently, and not to say all of them that are bad, but often the people at the top of these countries and corporations don't know when enough is enough. And you see very few rare examples of honorable leaders, which I believe Pierre Poilievre is going to be one of those. Same with Milei in Argentina. He's flipped that country around. He's clearly not doing it in a way that's making him stinking rich. He's doing it for the betterment of his people. So I think we really have a shot here in Canada of getting our country back, because we have a good man here that will do what's in our best interest. And he's an honest man. I believe he's an honest man.
it will be tough, though. Like, it's going to be a trade-off.
Temptation. I mean, I think many leaders fall prey to the temptation to shine on the international stage, right? I mean, I can't remember who it was in the UK. I believe it was the previous Labour Party leader who said that decisions in Westminster were essentially irrelevant because all the important things were happening internationally, right? And so if people are involved in status climbing and they hit the national pinnacle,
Right.
there's the international world to, what would you say, to dominate or to impress. And that's, I think that the power of that temptation or even of that peer pressure can't be underestimated.
I think that's what we're seeing with Justin Trudeau. I think he wants to jump over to the UN. He wants to go global because, well, we don't like him here. That organization is already set up for the woke DEI, all that kind of stuff. So maybe he gets a job and jumps over there, and then he can do his oohs on the world stage. Who knows?
So, okay, so now you've been these events, these 600 events that you've gone to. So let's say that's something approximating 1,000 to 1,200 since we last talked. You spent a lot of time speaking to, and I presume listening to, ordinary Canadians. I heard you made a speech in the House of Commons that went viral in the last couple of weeks, and you spoke very persuasively on behalf of working class Canadians. And so tell us what you've learned, what you've heard over the last couple of years, and how that's shaped you and changed you, let's say, as you moved from, well, as you shifted your position up the political hierarchy and are poised, really likely to take the reins in Canada at some point in the next year. You've listened to all these people, and so what have you learned, and what has it made you convinced of, let's say?
Well, first of all, there's the bad news and the good news. The bad news is that people feel like they've done absolutely everything right, and their lives are trapped. Young people say, look, okay, I went through, I got an education, I work nonstop, and I have made the calculation that there is no mathematical path for me to own a house. Mm-hmm. It's just not possible. In Toronto here, for example, if you take the average income and the average house price, it would take you 29 years to save up for a down payment. So, if you're
for a down
payment, not to pay it off, forget paying it off. And so if you're a young woman who's got a biological clock, obviously, well, do the math. You start off at, let's say you're 25. Well, you're going to be in your 50s before you can afford the average house.
And you would be paying off that house well over 100 and something, 30 years old. So it's our country's broken.
So how are you ever going to have kids?
And that's about the time when people think about downsizing from their house.
That's what they used to think about, downsizing. And, they usually had their house paid off back by the time they were in their early 50s. So just to show how dreadfully things have worsened. That's the picture of the youth. Then there's the kind of middle-aged people who do have kids already, and they're terrified of the dangers in the streets. I mean, our streets are just being overtaken by drugs and gangsterism and other dangers. And
just saw that with the map I showed. I mean, the amount of crime in our country, I think it's worse, far worse, like 5-10 times worse than we all realize. We see this stuff, but looking at the map and you start looking at all the timestamps, like 8 o'clock, 11 p.m., 3 a.m., all the different robberies and mischief and car thefts. It's more than I even realize. And I'm reporting this stuff on here daily. We've got this fool Jagmeet Singh here. So he is a jiu-jitsu in black belt and he did wrestling growing up. And for whatever reason, the host of This Hour is 22 Minutes wanted to do this interview in what I'm assuming is a jiu-jitsu dojo because it's all padded on the floor. These liberals like Iqra Khalid need to watch what they say. They can't just run their mouths making up any sort of garbage, especially with how bad the state of our country is in right now. It's just disgraceful. Can we not get rid of this trash out of our government?